In many years, we often have a late frost or freeze or just simply cold temperatures that occur after plants have broken dormancy. It can be difficult to tell these sorts of injuries from plant diseases like fire blight and anthracnose. So in this presentation, I'm going to take you through how to tell the difference between these problems and also talk about recommendations for managing anthracnose. So in this image, on the left, you can see that the leaves are turning brown. There's wilting and necrosis. And we see a similar problem in the image on the right. These are situations where both of these plants, both sycamore and oak, are susceptible to a plant disease called anthracnose, as well as all plants could be susceptible to a cold temperature injury at certain times of the year. So what can we look for to try to determine which of these is causing this browning and wilting? Plant diseases tend to be host specific. So although we use a term like anthracnose and it can be applied to many different plants, the particular species of pathogen is what we call host specific. So for instance, the fungus that causes sycamore anthracnose is not the same fungus that causes oak anthracnose. Generally, a pathogen is only going to affect that one host or perhaps a few related hosts. So for instance, sycamore anthracnose might also affect London plane trees, which are in the same genus. The term anthracnose, just to make it clear, is basically a really bad leaf spot problem, and it often moves beyond the leaf into the veins, down the petiole, and then later can actually cause damage to the twigs and dieback in the trees. How is this different if it's low temperature injury? Low temperature injury is not host specific. So you may see an injury on a landscape tree, but you might also notice it on other types of plants in the landscape, not just one particular type of plant. So for instance, after a recent cold temperature event, this is damage to tomato plants and potato plant as a result of cold temperatures. Anthracnose diseases tend to be what we call vein delimited. This means that the pathogen is often trapped in between the veins, so the spots can look a little bit angular. We also notice that the spotting or the damage can be observed sometimes just on the veins. So you may see discolored veins, and sometimes this is more visible on the underside. With low temperature injury, it's not going to be vein delimited. You may, if it's light, you may just observe damage at the tips or margins, but it can be the whole leaf. And if it is the whole leaf, usually it looks like wilting and collapse, which can look similar to fire blight disease. These are plant diseases, and they are not going to simply go away. So we're going to see that it continues down the limb into the twigs. Basically during moderate periods of temperature and when we have some moisture, so often throughout the spring. On the surface, you may see that the wood itself looks discolored if it is a plant disease. With low temperature injury, the difference is that plants will recover. Once we are past the point where we're no longer getting those cool temperatures, and for low temperatures, it can be, for some tropical plants, it can be as low as 50 degrees may cause damage. On most other plants, it's going to be closer to the freezing mark. Here we see this is a grape that was injured by a low temperature event, and it killed this developing set of flowers, but we see growth further down on this same stem from secondary and tertiary buds. So the plants will basically recover over time. With plant diseases, over time, the damage is continuing to work down. So sometimes it can be helpful to actually cut into the wood. Generally, with plant pathogens, you will find that there are areas with internal discoloration. So this is fire blight disease that started in the blooms and is now working its way down into this twig and larger sections of wood. In contrast with low temperature injury, although we see a little bit of discoloration on this petiole, the damage does not extend into the wood greater than about 1/4 inch in diameter. So in an image like this is what we would say is a classic case of a plant disease. We see that it's vein delimited, it seems to be angular, and it's only affecting one certain type of plant, which is sycamore. Whereas with low temperature injury, we see the damage on unrelated types of plants. Here we have an oak and a maple. And over time, the plants are going to recover, and the twigs themselves are not becoming discolored because it's mostly this very young succulent growth that's affected. With anthracnose diseases such as sycamore anthracnose, it's currently mid-May, so we're about 1 month past bud break. It is too late to treat for anthracnose this year, at least on this early phase. The pathogen is already in the wood, and products that we spray on the surface are not going to make it into those twigs and stop the problem. There are trunk injections that are labeled, which are generally applied in late summer from about July to September. These products can protect for up to 3 years, and here are 4 examples of injections that are labeled for use in Oklahoma. These are to be applied by an arborist. This does require specialized equipment, and so it's not something that we would suggest for a home gardener. If you were worried about sycamore anthracnose, perhaps you have a history of a problem, then next season we can anticipate this disease and begin foliar applications of a fungicide beginning at bud break. And generally you will need 2 fungicide applications about 10 days apart. Whenever we are trying to figure out what products are labeled for use, one great resource that we have is this website, kellysolutions.com/OK/pesticide index, where you can actually search to see if certain pesticides are registered for use in your state. So I'm just going to show some screenshots. First, I searched by pest, and so I typed in the word anthracnose, got to make sure you spell it right, and searched for anthracnose diseases. Now again, there are many different anthracnose diseases, and so there's one on cucumber, cotton, you can see some of these others. I selected the one for anthracnose or blight of sycamore. When I click that, it will open up the products that are specifically registered for use for sycamore anthracnose. Most of these are what we would call products more for commercial applicators. And if you keep in mind that most sycamore trees are rather large, it's unlikely that a home gardener is going to have the equipment to properly and safely apply these products. And so often it will be commercial applicators that are treating specifically for this disease. If you're a home gardener and the tree is a smaller size that you're able to treat it yourself, the best way to do this is follow the same procedure at this website, but this time we're going to search by site, and you would type in that the site is sycamore. There are several landscape fungicides that don't specifically list the name of the disease, but will say that it is safe for landscape ornamentals, including sycamore. So you can search by sycamore and you'll see a list of products. You can also, often it may be easiest just to see simply what is available at your local garden center, since that is often the limitation. Again, those foliar fungicides are not to be applied at this time. They should have been applied just before or at bud break for a few weeks, about 7 to 10 day intervals. And the active ingredients that we look for at the local garden center include mancozeb, chlorothalonil, potassium salts of phosphoric acid, propiconazole, copper products, and you may find others. Most of the fungicides that are available at garden centers are effective for this pathogen. You just have to make sure that it is safe to apply on that site, which is the sycamore. If you have any questions about sycamore anthracnose, fire blight, or cold temperature injury, then the best place to get additional information is at your local county extension office. There is an extension office in all of our counties, and you can simply go to this website and locate the office nearest you. Thank you.